Oh my God, this is amazing! Oh man!
Oh, and
no,
what?
it was not.
Well, if you say so, let it be. Привіт усім! Ми досі з вами перебуваємо на Games Gathering, і поруч зі мною знаходиться, без перебільшення, легенда ігротворення, людина, яка подарувала цьому світу серію Diablo. І, власне, ви можете це побачити по його футболці. David Brevik. So, hello sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So, how's this whole event for you? So, is it your first time in Ukraine, right?
Yes, it is. It's my first time in Ukraine, and it's been great so far. The event's really nice. It's big. There's a lot of people here. A lot of great-looking indie games and things like that. So it's so far a very fun event.
So,
Beautiful city too.
thanks. It's really nice to hear. So here in a couple of hours you will have a speech about the creation of Diablo.
Yeah.
But for those who won't be able to listen to the whole thing for the whole hour of you telling stories, so let's just say, could you please share like one or two the most memorable parts, the most memorable stories regarding Diablo making?
Sure. Let's see. Probably the one that I would say I tell the most often has to do with in Diablo 1. Originally, the design for Diablo 1 was a turn-based game instead of real-time, and I wanted it to be turn-based. And the Blizzard South, their Blizzard was divided into two parts: a northern part up near San Francisco and a southern part down in Irvine. And they called up and said, "Hey, you should make the game real-time," and I was opposed to it. But I fought against it. Other people started hearing about it. They got excited about it turning into a real-time game, and finally came to a vote. And I lost. I voted against turning it to real-time, and everybody else won. And so then I converted the game to real-time, and I can still remember the very first time that I clicked the mouse button and had the warrior walked over and he smacked a skeleton apart. And I went, oh my God, this is amazing! And I knew not only was I wrong that real-time was going to be better, but also that this was something super special. It had nothing like that had ever kind of had that kind of experience before, and so kind of the birth of the Diablo-like experiences were made in that moment. I can still remember it like it was yesterday.
So, and what was, let's just say, the most challenging thing while making the game in its, let's just say, ready-made state?
I would say that there were a bunch of different technical challenges. I think one of the biggest technical challenges was the fact that it was I didn't know anything about networking, and so we were supposed to make this game. We invented BattleNet about 6 months before the end of before Diablo was going to get released, and they kept saying, "Are you going to make it multiplayer?" "Yeah, it's multiplayer." Yeah. But I didn't know anything about making it multiplayer. I didn't know anything about networking code. And so then they came up and realized that the game wasn't ready, and so a couple people from down south came up and actually taught me how to make the game into a multiplayer game, and we converted it all in about 6 months from single player to multiplayer, and integrated in BattleNet and all that kind of stuff. So that was probably the biggest technical challenge for Diablo 1.
So, and basically, what does the person feel after seeing that your creation becomes the most definitive game of its time, and basically bringing a lot of people together, and what is most important, surviving for so many years?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it's such a blessing. It's so amazing to have been such a part of a amazing team, incredible experience, and I love it. I just love being a part of it, and it's hard to really even describe. Like, my life is so different because of Diablo, and when we were first making it, I never knew it would be anything like that. I never knew it was going to be such a hit. If we could just sell maybe 20,000 copies, then we might be able to make a second one, or we might be able to break even. And for having this kind of extended success is amazing. It's just brilliant. And it's a testament not only to the team, but also the core design and everything about it. The story, the lore, the look, everything about it just really came together at the perfect time. And just so fortunate to be part of that.
Well, recently I had a chance to talk to John Romero, and he said that at that times, piracy was really huge things to battle, and if you can beat them, you join them.
Right.
So what techniques did you use, did you try to implement to, let's just say, to convert piracy to your side?
I don't know if we did anything. We had a couple things that we did, but we didn't convert. I mean, largely people just pirated the game. That's just the way it was. And it was because of the fact that you can't really control anything that's not online like that. If something's online permanently, that's the best way to combat piracy. No matter what kind of techniques you have for a single player game or a game that it's going to get cracked pretty quickly, and no matter how hard you try, it will end up being. We used to, back in those days, that people would combat it a little bit by having, like when you start up the game, they'd say, hey, just what's the third word on page 7 of the manual? And then you would go in the manual and you would look it up. And that was a clever way to do it, except for then people just ended up photocopying or typing out the manual, and then it was useless. So they tried all sorts of little tricks like that, but nothing really worked.
Well, also, it may be not in the final video, but let me share my personal story regarding Diablo. Diablo 2 was the first game on my personal PC, and I was super bad at the time. So when I just left the first settlement, I was killed by that lady in white, the pale with long hair and scythe, and I was so afraid to move along that I spent, I don't know, I cannot remember the exact amount of hours, but I stayed on the very first location till I hit level 17.
Oh man!
And only then breathed through the whole first act. But then I was smashed by Duriel, and I asked my friend to come and help beat this monster.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people get smashed by Duriel.
It was way too challenging because of the small arena.
Yeah. And the load time, right? There was like a loading lag.
Huge spike
and you would end up dead before you even loaded in, and that was a brutal part of the game for sure.
So was it intentional?
No, it was not intentional. But later we could have fixed it, but we ended up not fixing it simply because it's great to have some challenge like that in the game.
Well, if you say so, let it be. Well, and now let's get down to Diablo 3 and mostly to recent announcement of Diablo 4. So what were your first impressions after seeing that the fourth part really resonates with Diablo 2 in terms of really this grim atmosphere?
Yeah, it seems like they are going back towards a grittier, kind of darker art style and more of a gothic art style, which is great. I think that Diablo 3 kind of went away from that, and going back to that kind of look, I think, is kind of important for Diablo, and I think a lot of people were really pleased with the way that it seemed to go and for their announcement.
But again, as we have talked previously, in video games, it's way different than in movies or in writing, literature, and the things that you have created don't actually belong to you. So after all these investigations made by Kotaku, all these stories about relaunches, about the scrapping multiple versions, the problems of Diablo 3 Era 37, and what did you feel after seeing what have other people done with your, basically, brainchild?
Well, it's kind of a strange place for me to be. I really want more Diablo. I love Diablo. But also it's kind of weird because they would make decisions or do things that I wouldn't necessarily do. And so I think that a lot of the stuff for Diablo 4 in particular, that they've kind of leaned more towards things that I would design. It was much more similar to kind of the ideas of where I think that the franchise would have gone. I had an original design for Diablo 3, and then when we left, they scrapped it and went a different direction. And it seems like with Diablo 4, they're getting kind of back towards some of the things that I had kind of proposed for the original Diablo 3. So I think that's good. But again, it's out of my hands. Like it's kind of they're going to be able to do whatever they want, and there's not much I can do about it. And I just hope that it continues to entertain people, and they end up making great games that people love to play. So that's my main take from it, is that I've just got to kind of see it done without me.
Okay, and as a viewer from the last seat, so what's your general opinion of the state of Blizzard at the moment? Like, without Mike Morhaime, without Chris Madsen, and all these new set of announcements, especially Overwatch 2, which is basically, it sort of contradicts to previous policy of Blizzard.
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, it's changing. It's definitely a changing organization. A lot of the people, in fact, almost all of the original crew of people that were kind of on the executive level there are gone. I'd say at least 90% of them. So the company's just very, very different. Not only is it very different, I can't really relate to it because I wasn't there when they had their massive growth, right? I left right before World of Warcraft, and after that they had massive, massive growth. They went from a couple hundred people to thousands of employees, and so that already changed a lot of the way Blizzard was, and I think that as you grow, as a company grows, lots of things have to change, and so without all the people there, without all of the kind of original founders and stuff, the company's changed. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I think the companies do need to change. They need to stay relevant. They need to have kind of changes. And if people at the upper level are kind of burnt out or not really participating like they used to, it's best that they aren't there and get people that are eager to make something great. So I don't know what's happening with them. I don't really know almost anybody over there anymore. The only person I know is Alan Adham, who was originally one of the founders of Blizzard Entertainment, and was the president of Blizzard for a long time before Mike. And then Mike became president, and Alan left and did some kind of business investment stuff, and just recently, a couple years ago, came back. And so I know he's in charge of a lot of the games there, and he's a superb designer. So I still think that they can make great stuff.
Well, they actually do. Well, still, you're into this business, and nowadays we have different trends of even games consumption.
Yeah.
So, as an old school person, are you into this new subscription services, or do you still prefer to buy and own games separately?
I think that I like both kinds, really. I'm not really a big subscription person. I don't think subscriptions really work very well in most games. But I think that the idea of making a game that's kind of an online game and continually growing, games as a service, they call it, where you build up a game and you constantly update it and you upgrade it and you put in new content and things like that, I think is pretty much the wave of the future. There are so many games out there right now. There are so many games that are released every day. It's really hard to get people's attention. So one of the ways to get that, to combat that, and have customers, is have a game that people will play forever. And it's so hard to get customers and get attention that they want to hold on to those customers when they get them. So I think it's a model that's here to stay. Do I like it? I don't dislike it, but I think it's also weird to limit yourself to one game, right? I don't even limit myself to one game, and I have 100 games that I still want to play that I don't even have enough time to play the ones that I do. If I just played one thing, I don't think that, which I did for years. I played like Everquest and World of Warcraft, played these games for years, and I didn't play almost anything else, right? And I like getting away from that and getting back into playing a lot of variety of games much more now than I used to.
By the way, since you mentioned games as a service, I would like to ask you a few questions about Path of Exile.
Sure.
You were at some point an advisor, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was consulting for Grinding Your Games in Tencent, helping them get the game ready for China and giving them feedback on the game and things like that. And in fact, I just got back from ExileCon in New Zealand, 2 weeks ago or so.
Well, as far as I know, the game rules in China are super strange.
Yeah.
So basically, you are promoting a gritty game in a country where you cannot show skulls, blood, bones.
Yeah.
How did you do this?
It's not easy. There are different ways to kind of get around it. There's a lot of tactics that they use to kind of get around some of those things. And the government, they recently had a big change. They weren't approving any games for a little while, and they came up with some new rules and stuff like that. And I think that it'll help make there more of a variety of games there. And I think that the market's changing in a lot of ways. But for China especially, it's definitely going hardcore mobile at this point. There's so much of the people there play mobile games almost exclusively at this point. So lots of changes going on there.
So, and again, the community of isometric ARPGs nowadays really is divided between Diablo and Path of Exile. So,
yeah.
Path of Exile, from the point of Diablo creator, which aspects of these games do you like the most?
Well, I think that the action that they have in the game is spot on. Like the way that you can, the feel of combating enemies and making all these different builds and all that. But I really enjoy those kind of things. So I think that is really where they shine. Is the variety of ways that you can play the game, and I think that gives it a lot of longevity. And I love the ideas that they're constantly, every couple months, having a new league and a different mechanic in the game, and the mechanics carry over and all these kind of things. And I also think that they really listen to their audience, and they really get their audience, and they interact with their audience and are constantly adding things that they're asking for. And I think that just their announcement of Path of Exile 2, which they just announced a couple weeks ago, shows exactly how they listen to their audience and the things, changing it so that the gems now, you can gem your skills instead of gemming your items, is a massive change and welcome change. And I think that those are great ideas to kind of move that game forward, and so I'm excited about it.
So now you do not work with Path of Exile.
No, I'm done consulting with them, but I still talk to Chris and John and.
So you have some sort of creative influence on the game.
Well, I don't know about that, but I talk to them. I don't know if they listen much, but they're very good. They know what they're doing. So.
So nowadays, people who are bad at math, they start to look for and make lists of best something of the decade.
Right.
Despite the decade ends in 2021, not just 2020. So, still, in your opinion, so what games would you name the best, not even of the decade, but which games have impressed you the most throughout your whole career and defined you as a game designer?
God, there's so many. But I'd say probably early on, games like Ultima and Wizardry were big influences on me. And then the game that impressed me the most that I've ever been was Doom. When Doom came out, it was so much better than any other game. It was unbelievable how they came up with this idea of how to render the game like that. And do the raycasting stuff. So I think that was brilliant, and it was so far ahead of its time. It was it was unbelievable, and that game blew me away more than any other. Then one of the games I love the most is a game called Everquest. That was a huge influence on me. I played many years of Everquest. It was a love-hate. It was a brutal game, but I met some really great friends playing it. Actually, met my wife playing it, and so it's there were like kind of lifetime friendships formed over Everquest, and so that kind of experience just is amazing. So I think that those are probably some of the biggest influences on my career.
So, and also there is a popular trend of not just HD remakes, but the whole new remakes like Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
Top-notch remake. And
right.
Which of maybe your games or the former Blizzard games would you like to remake in the same refurnished, like totally rehashed version with adding some new elements?
Well, if you're going to add new elements, then I think that it's Diablo 2 would be the perfect game to remaster. But it would have to be a kind of a different game. It wouldn't really be exactly like Diablo 2. It would largely maybe be the same, and maybe the story's the same, and a few things like that. But I think that I would love to see something like that. I don't think it's going to be that easy if they are doing something. There's been rumors that they're going to be making one of these remake of Diablo 2. Whether or not it's true or not, I have no idea. But a lot of people ask me about that, whether or not I think it would be difficult to make the exact same game. But if you wanted to do something that was kind of like an updated version of it, you could that had some different mechanics and things like that. Then is it the same game? Is it really Diablo 2 then? I don't know. Maybe.
Well, you can even say that Dark Souls is a sort of Diablo 2 with rehashed vision.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And there's lots of rumors that Diablo 4, before it was announced, was it going to be like a Dark Souls kind of game that they're going to reimagine what direction Diablo is going to go in? There are
like
lots
a
of
full
rumors.
Circle, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it turned out that they didn't. When they announced and showed it off, it's kind of back to the old style or whatever of isometric.
By the way, have you tried playing Diablo on a controller?
You mean like on like Nintendo Switch or something like that on the consoles? Yeah, I have. I have it on all of the. Let's see. I have it on PlayStation and on Switch. I think one of those. I don't remember. And it's great. I think that it plays pretty well on it. I don't think it's the easiest game in the world to translate to console for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, so
but I think they did a really great job.
So, and speaking about the upcoming projects, so 2020 is going to be big and with a bunch of really nice, top-notch games. So, what are you the most excited about?
Oh, honestly, this may sound strange, but game I'm looking forward to is Animal Crossing. I love Animal Crossing, and my family and I play a lot, and I think that that's probably right now. I'm playing a lot of Pokemon, Sword and Shield, which I love. It's really great, and I think that's probably Animal Crossing is my number one thing that I'm looking forward to. That comes out in the spring.
By the way, since you mentioned Pokemon, lots of people in the community are not satisfied that the series, let's just say, is stagnating. So that's a question for you as a creator of long-lasting franchise. What do you think? Like, when you're building a franchise to last for decades, so is it better just to stay in the same stream or try to make some sort of radical changes? So can radical changes make any good for the series?
It can. For instance, going with Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 were kind of overhead sprite games or whatever, and then Grand Theft Auto 3 changed. They went radically different style and made a wonderful.
Well, that's mostly technical limitation.
Yeah, maybe. Well, no, sort of, but it was also a game choice. Like, they could have stuck with the same kind of overhead view or whatever if they wanted to, but they decided to do something radical. So sometimes it can work, but sometimes it doesn't. So it's I think it's a risk if you might isolate your audience if you do something too different, but then making something that's very much the same, you can end up in a situation where people grow tired of it. So it's a tough balance for sure.
And since we already mentioned technology, what's your opinion on the VR, let's just say, opportunities? Because it seems to me like this Half-Life Alyx is going to be the final, let's just say, the final check whether this technology would be widely applied in gaming.
Yeah, I think that the Half-Life game is interesting. I don't really know if it's going to sell a lot of systems, though. The fact is that VR is tough because the audience isn't that big. And I don't think that the audience is very big because it's not only very expensive, and you have to have a really great computer and this other, hardware and all these things. Plus, I think that a lot of people, they haven't solved a lot of the issues with like motion sickness and all these other things. It's a tough market. I think that there's great opportunities, but I think that we need kind of like some updated technology before it really hits home. This reminds me a lot of like back in the 1980s, there were car phones, and they are these big honking pieces of metal in your car. Ooh, I'm talking on the phone in my car. So I think like VR right now is kind of in that car phone kind of era, and eventually we'll get into like, little flip phones and smaller, and then we'll get into smartphone level or whatever, kind of that progression. And it's going to be the same thing with VR. It will slowly get better and better and smaller. New inventions, new perspectives will come in. And with that, then you'll get more mass market adoption.
So that's basically it. It was super nice to talk to you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Super insightful, so thank you a lot. And we hope you have a good time in Ukraine.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Ну, а ви не забувайте підтримувати це відео вподобайкою, поширенням і чекайте нових відео на каналі PlayUA.